Hi, everyone, and welcome back to our bi-weekly FUELARTS Art and Tech Online webinar series, where we are mixing the two worlds, the world of art tech and the world of venture capital. So here in May, we're continuing a series of interviews with the founders of our recent FUELARTS and TEZOS Accelerator. So the startup graduates might be introduced even more to the international art tech community, and the community learns more about their growth and success. This is our sixth webinar in a row, and I'm happy to welcome today, first of all, Sonia Stubblebine, our co-host, the project manager at FUELARTS and head of content, and our today's guest, one of the graduates of the FUELARTS and TEZOS Accelerator 2023, Carolyn Marie, one of the three co-founders of M1X Labs, professional entrepreneur, collector, artist, poet, and Web3 community organizer. Hi, Carolyn.
Good morning.
Good morning. Yeah, we know you are based.
PM.
Yeah, in Hawaii. So it's 6 a.m. now. 5, even
5 a.m.
5 a.m. Great. I mean, incredible. How was, during the demo day started 2 hours earlier than our today's webinar. So it was like 3 a.m. How was it?
Well,
In
I don't
terms
know.
of
I thought I
pitching.
did pretty well. I thought I did pretty well. And at that, I like to stand usually when I present. So today I'm sitting. Hopefully it'll be okay. I usually have a lot of energy when I talk. So
Yeah, webinars are subject to be more relaxed, more entertainment. So we see that your co-founder Ryan Tanaka, one of the top Web3 influencers, already says go Carolyn. So
thank you.
it's great. It's great. Yeah, I've just said that you are one of the three co-founders, but we of course will touch this topic later and ask you to elaborate more on that, about the hierarchy of decision making and so on. But our first question is for our graduates is quite a traditional one. So we presented you as an entrepreneur, collector, artist, poet, and Web3 community organizer. But what was before you tapped into Web3 industry? So could you please tell more about your background and what has brought you to Web3?
Yes. Well, it's been a long and I would say sort of wandering journey to it, but I've always really been interested in both art and like commerce and markets, but I never really kind of got a good opportunity really to combine the two, I felt, until just kind of like this year, or not this year, but this era, if you will, the Web3 era, as it's sort of like as we're, as it's now has a name. I found out sort of about Bitcoin in 2011, but at the time that was like way outside of my technical capabilities. And then later, like the regulatory issues here were kind of, not as welcoming as they are now. But so I really was interested in this idea of having alternative means of exchange and like peer-to-peer networks, right? Like having grown up in the early like internet age, like the peer-to-peer networks and that sort of like wild and unregulated environment was appealing in a lot of ways in terms of just like the freedom of information and flow and exchange of ideas and like value between people and parties around the world, right? So that was really exciting. And I was like, okay, well, this is really cool, but like, will it survive? And so after spending the pandemic more or less doing an artist retreat, I heard about NFTs through and the use of smart contracts or, and the blockchain to create smart contracts and more or less new networks through an art community online. And that more or less began my rabbit hole hopping down in the beginning of 2021. I was like, okay, I'm going to spend this year figuring this out and trying to see where I can, like, where I fit in. And ultimately, my research started in Ethereum, but at the time they were very much like proof of work. And so I did inevitably gravitate towards Tezos because of the like underground digital arts community that is still very strong. And I really felt that it was at least my hypothesis in 2021, like Q2-ish, that if this type of momentum and traction was already present in such a relatively small blockchain, or like compared to Ethereum, right? It was a disproportionately active community, and I felt if this this is present, I was like, this is going to go. This is going to go up. This is my hypothesis, right? And so it definitely had no regrets doing that. And I officially opened my first Tezos wallet, and it was actually like 2 years ago. So it was like May 31st. That's the date. So I'm coming up on my anniversary for being in Web3. So that's really kind of where it all started. And I guess you could say I just kept getting sucked further and further into the hole, the rabbit hole, if you will. So
good, great. I mean,
I could go. I mean,
sounds like a story with a brilliant storytelling.
Absolutely. Would also love to ask you more about your experience at FUELARTS X Accelerator. How was it for you, and what are probably the things that you learned during the program?
Okay, well, I know that Lisa had a lot of fun with the Tezos Tech Mentors. She had, well, anyways, I'll get to that later, but we're all very nerdy, and so we very much love research, and that is what I have to say is my favorite. Is, I mean, Denis and Sonia and everyone, and I mean Roxana, even, like the whole gang, like you all really just turned the knob up on the signal to noise ratio, and we're like, this is where you should be looking for the information regarding this industry, because ultimately what had led us to creating our company, right, was realizing that there were just like these massive gaps in sort of like software support and infrastructure for like this market, right? So, and like understanding, even though I have like an art history and art background and a business background, like I never really understood the art market part of it all. And so it was it was like the classic mind blown scenario where it's just like, and even this year, I mean, I would have, I don't know, I mean, organically, if I had to figure it out on my own, like to go look at some of these reports and things, I just just kind of was like, I know it was just outside of my consciousness. And so I think to me, that's like the number one thing, because I am so data driven and I really do appreciate the research. And I'd already done, as much technical research about, the blockchain and everything else that we're working with, as far as my technical capabilities are concerned. And as much that I knew that I needed to recruit and, another team member for that department. So that's my number one, is data, quality of data, and really just having that specificity. I think maybe I'm getting a bit too used to the fact that, meaning I feel spoiled now having gone through the accelerator, because it is unique and it's an underrepresented perspective, I feel, especially in the Web3 space, right? So that's the thing for me. And so, yeah, like the details and the data.
Okay, yeah, thank you so much for your words of appreciation and your gratitude. Well, let's show everyone what has resulted in, I mean, as a result of your graduation, of your time spent at the accelerator. And the result, I mean, to confirm the result will be your speech. Yeah.
Okay, I was worried we're doing pitch first. Okay, right. I was thought we were, right. Okay.
So the audience is yours. We are deleting ourselves from this stream. Yeah, okay. I believe it will be less stressful than it was 3 weeks ago at the demo day. So
a little bit. I'm going to switch things up a bit too, and keep it a bit more casual and change the narrative order just a bit, because I really wanted to talk about our team, because this is something I want everyone to keep in mind in terms of like who we are and like what our individual skill sets and ultimately complementary backgrounds and interests are. So Denis mentioned that I'm a Web3 community organizer. And so I mentioned I also got interested in Tezos 2 years ago. And from there, it more or less is getting deeper and deeper involved, and using my experience from like Web 2 business, and as well as like community organizing with like political and activist type backgrounds. I really enjoy like community, working with people, lots of people, even though like in the past I've been a solo founder. This is, I really enjoy working with a team. And these, my two co-founders, Lisa and Ryan, are like some of my best friends, and I absolutely love working with them. And we are, we have a lot of fun together. So just please keep our background in mind as you're looking through that. We've got music, we've got community, we've got Web3. I mean, Ryan was originally drawn to crypto because he was passionate about reforming and disrupting the music industry with smart contracts. So that's kind of a unique story, in that he's been thinking about these things in the same way that, you know, I've been thinking about markets and decentralized, you know, exchange networks and regional economies and things like that. And then Lisa has like an absolute phenomenal career as an engineer working at, you know, big data and e-commerce unicorns. And so she's really coming at things with a really strong fundamental technical background. And she's also a big lover of music, and which we all are, very, very big lovers of music. So that's not technically part of on the resume, but it's part of our personalities and interests, and it's really what brings us kind of under the same rhythm, if you will. If we had to, because we briefly experimented with an electronica band, forming an electronica band before we decided to work together. And so it really matches our personalities well. Like Lisa is sort of like the drums, you know, and right, so she's sort of like this pacing, where Ryan sort of is more like a melody, where he kind of like weaves it together. And then naturally I'm coming in with the vocals or a voiceover, something like that, you know, to sort of weave it all together in a narrative way. And so about 6 months into my Web3 journey, I began to feel these like acute pain points on the lack of especially marketing and promotional tooling outside of what was more or less being pushed at the time for that niche, which was at the time was like sort of like the metaverse. It was like, that's the place where you go to promote and market and network and communicate, right? But as we found out that that's not really mature and developed yet, and it's also not entirely scalable, and or is it accessible, being that it requires a lot more computing power, and ultimately it doesn't really replace the type of marketing automations and infrastructure that exists in Web 2 in terms of like what does Web 3 really offer to your average artist or person who's interested in art and collecting or music, right? Is like we don't really have as much robust tooling to say, you know, share your creative works, or to organize your creative works, and to sort of do these things all in a Web3 native way, a blockchain native way. And so the motivation to improve the marketing scenario for people at like the ground level, especially like new emerging artists and people who are really entering the space as artists, not basically compared to like a venture-backed PFP collection that has been engineered with like, you know, a team of a half a dozen people and heavily marketed, right? I wanted to explore ways to support this ecosystem and the players in it from the bottom up, okay? And it just so happens that the need for blockchain adoption from the top down is being driven in the art market by the the changing regulatory environment, right? Because transparency around transaction and price data, as well as lots of the financial accounting, these things are becoming more and more of a concern for what is ultimately a gray market right now. And I think that that's something that I learned through the accelerator here, which is why I'm quoting Roxana's presentation about the art market, is that because I made this same mistake either. I was sort of like focusing on this sort of basically, if you will, the tip of the iceberg, which I think a lot of technologists did too, right? Is we sort of have this reductionist view of what the market actually is. And it's just like, oh, it's buyers and sellers. But really, there's this huge, it's kind of like hidden support system and infrastructure that makes that top sort of that 20%, that visible, most visible 20% really like brings everyone together to facilitate transactions. And so we're just happened to be, like I said, I really found this research out after the fact. So we really started to solve the problem for the lack of support for third parties in Web3 and for like NFT trade and curation specifically and marketing. But there is also this big institutional need from the top down. Okay. And so that really kind of like brings those two sides of the puzzle, the market really, or the market and the puzzle together. Is you have we have this desire to create a foundation through tools and infrastructure that to support a really long-term health and maturity of blockchain networks and ecosystems, because we believe that they do represent the future of commerce, as well as the future of data and information with regards to transparency, security, and ownership of the data. I think we're ready for that paradigm personally, and this is our contribution and the thing that we feel compelled to do the most. Okay, so our DApp is relatively a simple initial first sort of first principles execution of what we are wanting to do in terms of making things a little bit more streamlined and more simple and accessible. And that is to sort of bring back the idea of experience into the art ecosystem, the digital art ecosystem, because it doesn't feel like much of an experience when you are visiting a lot of marketplaces there, or even sometimes in virtual worlds. The art feels very distant and remote, and in the cases of marketplaces, it feels like you're wandering through a warehouse rather than having an interaction with the artwork itself, right? And really letting that experience guide your discovery versus, kind of just like a grid and looking at things from a more like kind of like it's a different attitude, right? We wanted to create something that was more of a pleasurable experience rather than what felt to me after a while, after a year or more in the space, is like it started to feel more like a chore at the end of the day than something that was fun. And so bless Ryan and his he wanted to help me overcome this, because I was just complaining about how it was just felt like a chore. It's like, I love the art and I love experiencing the art, but it just feels like a chore to have really no option other than scrolling or manually navigating. I was like, I don't want to have to, like, at the end of the day, do work to experience, this the massive amount of wonderful media and art that is on the blockchain. And so that's right when he said something to the effect, well, we could automate this process, right? And you don't have to actually be scrolling. And that was kind of like his famous last words, because we've been building ever since. And I've always wanted to be able to interact with this process, this automated browsing process, in a very natural way, using specifically voice commands and very natural language interface. And so I think that we sort of unconsciously built something that's perfect for a lot of the AI APIs that are now available today, and really like have even within the accelerator, there's just been a lot of improvements, and we're excited to be able to explore that. Now that we have our smart contract integrated, there's more room to fork around and find out with that area. So for now, we're just keeping a very simple and socially accessible, I think, user interface and experience, so that you can be hanging out with your friends, or you could be, as we so often are in these days, double screening, right? You're sitting here with your phone in hand, no doubt. There's at least 2 screens. Like, that's the realistic scenario of the world. And so I wanted to, include QR codes for for artists. And I'm very much looking forward to adding support for spreadsheets and things like that to support more artist tooling. But I find that it's something that artists are constantly required to furnish for exhibits and their own promotion. But right now, like, there was not anyone really providing that kind of tools for artists. And I thought, well, it gets exhausting. I'm like, well, why don't we just put it on the screen, and then it can be multi-purpose, right? And we can begin to break the fourth wall, which I'm really interested in exploring ways to use media and technology in a disruptive way, and breaking the fourth wall, putting a call to action on the screen, and like getting people to interact in a more personal, an intimate way with like the media. It was something that I wanted to do, because a lot of times I want to have that experience for myself, where you just like, you want to feel like you can hold something or possess something and have this conversation with it. And maybe you want to just be able to have that become just a more seamless experience and part of the day-to-day. So building in referral networks to that was something that we realized that would be useful and really be helpful, because if you know anything about like Web 2 e-commerce and marketing, word of mouth is the number one most powerful sales and conversion tool. So bringing tools for that and putting that into Web3 and doing it in a blockchain native way was something that we thought had value and utility. And so halfway through our sort of development process, Manifold, announced their referral program. So we felt like that was a pretty good positive indicator that we're moving in the right direction. And so that's the kind of like a little bit of this story, is that the QR codes and the links and everything, and the building the playlist and the curation, and that all ties back in together, is creating this network so that we can supercharge individual marketing efforts, because NFTs are here to stay. It's not a fad. And this news of the acquisitions by Le Centre Pompidou, this is a 2023 news item. This isn't old news. So very much NFTs are here to stay. And we are looking at things at the art market level, primarily because, like I stated earlier, the art market is a gray market, and it is facing increased regulatory pressure, which provides sort of a much more strong incentive for adoption than, for example, industries that are more highly regulated, like film and music, are faced with right now, which, if we look at the last digital sort of revolution towards streaming and downloadable content, the music and the film industry were extremely slow to adopt to that. And I don't think they're moving as fast as the art market is, especially considering some of the data that was presented in the 2023 Art Basel and UBS Art Market Report. So which is why I'm choosing to highlight the art market data specifically for our presentation. And just to give an idea, I mean, there's clearly more numbers that we can add to this, but I think this is a pretty big, ambitious market target as it is. And so very much we're looking at building for the long game. Again, like with Brian has been interested in reforming and innovating within the music space, and bringing more transparency and fairness to rights management, as well as like licensing and so forth. So we are planning for those long-term type of partnerships with established players in those industries like film and music. But for now, our focus is specifically on the art market within the Web3 ecosystem and building support for marketing, promotion, management, analytics from like the bottom up. Okay. So this is, we are in phase 1 now, and phase 2, phase 3, and phase 4, you know, those are going to happen. I would say phase 2 and 3 are, you know, going to take a significant time, because that's where we're going to go. We're going to go multi-chain. And again, if we just like the regulatory landscape of the art market is the #1 positive indicator that this market is, even despite like the darkness that we're in right now, that this is really, this is that we're all on the right track here. And the only thing that is our limiting factor in terms of like how fast we can build along that pipeline, or that the development timeline, is funding. And a $1 million seed will fund 12 to 18 months. And we're putting us at a 10 million post-money valuation. And we're really looking for partners, investor partners who believe in this vision and believe in the future that is blockchain and AI as inevitable. Like, we believe that very strongly, and we're looking for people who are fearless and not afraid to disrupt the status quo, and, you know, be unpopular in the short term if necessary. Like, that's okay. So hit us up. We're legit. We're a Delaware C Corp. We narrowly didn't choose SVB when we chose our banks. We're a very new company, and we're excited to get started. I don't think I have any more slides.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Carolyn. For those who have joined us recently, yeah, just to remind that you have just heard the short elevator pitch after completion of Ulysses Accelerator, named after James Joyce, a famous Irish writer. So, and for those who would like to hear the strong business pitch after FUELARTS acceleration, so please join our YouTube channel and look at how Carolyn was presenting a 6-minute crisp and clear pitch during our demo day. So we just asked Carolyn to make it more relaxed to this time. So that was really great. That was a nice storytelling. So yeah, we have a lot of comments, but we'll share them a bit later. So
thanks, Ryan.
Yes.
Sure.
Yeah. So Ryan and Torn are very active now. So let's get back to our questions, the short questions and short answers in a quick Q&A mode. So could you please tell us more about your competitive advantage of M1X Labs?
Okay, I think this is where I'm going to do the video. I'm just going to let our video play, because if otherwise I'll run out of time. I think we talked about this, so we're just going to let it play. Okay.
Yeah.
Or should do I present? Okay. There we go. Okay, there we go. Share. Oh, how is that? It's not okay. Well, I guess it was playing without me. There we go. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so our competitive advantage, I kind of hinted at it earlier, is 100% our team. Okay, like, we are all friends, a combined friendship of over a decade. Ryan and I had kind of crossed paths a few years prior to meeting, you know, sort of like connecting 2 years ago, when I started pestering him about questions like very, very specific blockchain and like blockchain related and crypto questions. And it more or less escalated and continued from there. And we wake up every day with that that same like excitement and curiosity about like what's happening. And so like we have a lot of fun together, and we're very passionate about our industry and our work. And so even Lisa, her idea of a vacation was to learn smart contracts, you know, and I was like, so I took full advantage of that. She had been living in the Bay Area, but during the pandemic, that sort of got to be too much. And so she moved back to the island, which I live on, where we had met about exactly 9 years ago at a startup and venture capital tech meetup in the area. And I had emailed her because, you know, and she was writing and talking about things like decentralization and the problems with centralization even back then. And we were both interested in Bitcoin and so forth. So even then we were interested in the same things and kind of like hacking on projects or working on projects that had a lot of overlap too. And so when she texted me like in August, like, oh, hey, I just moved back from the Bay Area. You want to hang out, or you want to do something, or you want to go to the beach or something? And I was like, oh my God, of course, yes. Like, I'm so glad to hear that you're back in town. There's not, you know, a lot of nerds out here in my neighborhood. So I'm always like eager to connect. So within 24 hours, we're at the beach, and within 5 minutes at the beach, we're in the water. We're in the water swimming, and we're literally both at the same time, like, so like, are we talking about like crypto and like Web3 and like the future of the internet and et cetera, et cetera? And so yes, we were. And I was like, Lisa, you should come write smart contracts like on Tezos, and you should join our company. Me and Ryan are doing this thing. And I told her the whole pitch about like the referral network and the art and the music and the underground and everything. And she's like, you know what? Like, I have been active in the Polygon sort of like gaming ecosystem with Guild of Guardians and like Phantom Galaxies and things like that. And she's like, I have also noticed that the lack of support for like marketing resources or marketing tools, you know, it's just like, there's giveaway this, there's giveaway that. There's not a lot of built-in incentives for people to participate other than kind of these like lottery-like systems, if you will. And so it didn't take, you know, but another month and a half or so of like, you know, talks and of course, like, you know, go trips to the beach to really get her excited about the team, and then introduced her to Ryan, or the project, and then introduced her to Ryan. And, you know, sort of like the rest is history. We really got here as fast as we could. I wasted no time whatsoever. So like, we are friends and we love the project that we're working on. And I can tell you that when we are able to work full time together, like each one of us are waking up with a very strong, playful, energetic attitude, you know, and so that's like number one competitive advantage. And also the fact that we do have
you have the other ones.
Backgrounds. What?
You have the other ones. Please share them.
We do have, but it's our team I think to me that this is the number one strongest thing, that everything else kind of just fades away because if you really understand, like that example I gave about our band experience, like we really do have, you know, the rhythm, the melody, and
Is it hard for co-founders to live in different time zones? I mean, you're you're developing one startup, but you live in different time zones.
Well, so Lisa and I are in the same time zone, and Ryan's only in LA, so it's only like 2 to 3 hours, depending on the time of the year it is. So it's not as asynchronous as some of our coordination and work that I do with the DAO, which there's a lot more people. I mean, literally all around the world. So I'm kind of already like used to that. So like Ryan being in LA is just like, you know, that's like, you know, whatever, that's no big deal at all. He's kind of a late night creature anyway. So it doesn't really feel like we're in a different time zone sometimes.
Also, I wanted to ask you, like, you were talking about how you work together, but also, like, when you do make very, like, complex decisions, how does it work? Like, who is like obeying to who? Like, how exactly does it operate in your company?
Well, the other thing that we all organically agree on is that we really love like the first principles of decentralization, and we like horizontal hierarchy. So any like even me being here, this is kind of just like the natural, I was more excited to do it, and they were sort of like, yeah, I don't really feel like compelled to do that, or to step in. Like when we really let each other lead and follow as need be. And a lot of times we do come to consensus pretty quickly. But we are definitely all very strong personalities and very opinionated as well. So when we do come to points where we disagree, there are often like some very heated and passionate and sometimes like ongoing debate. They're like, some things like Ryan and I have been debating about, quite intensely, for like an entire year, right? But ultimately, those are the type of conversations and pushback, and I would say like, creative friction that leads to some of the best outcomes that we have as a team. So it's a bit of, utopia mixed in with like an occasional, I guess, hurricane.
Yeah. Thank you, Carolyn. Please tell us. I mean, you've picked up for M1X Labs very interesting intersection of art and music, and for sure, in terms of your startup scaling, probably as we suspect, and as you said during the demo day, this is only the first step, and your startup will be, in terms of scaling, trying to tap into different, let's say, different intersections, adding music and fashion, music and sports and so on, and art and sports. But my question is, what will your market of today's, let's say, business idea, art and music, the intersection of art and music, what will this market look like 5 years after your product is finally launched?
Okay. I guess it's sort of like a two-part question because I am getting a bit long-winded.
Two-part, yeah, 1 minute per each.
Okay. I do believe that I meant bottom-up scaling. That's really where our interest is. I love grassroots organizing and community building. I love talking to people and understanding where they're coming from on a individual level first. So a bottom-up scaling method is really what our vision entails, and we will ultimately be adding support for additional contracts. Right now we have some support, but there's always new minting contracts and platforms coming out. So just building in support for that gradually is how we plan to grow, and as well as like take the multi-chain strategy, which is sort of like gradually be adding to that as we have the stability to do so, right, of our infrastructure. So everything remains functional performance-wise. We're still definitely in the stages of optimizing that, but very much bottom up is our strategy. But keeping that long-term top tier in mind, because we really want to bring professional level tools to the bottom and the grassroots tiers as well, and really support that whole pipeline of emerging artists, to potentially to blue chip artists. That would be great. Or the same for music too. Is like we would really love to see that, and our sentiments do lie sort of like with the the outliers and the underdogs and the upstarts. So from the bottom up is how we want to scale. And I think ultimately, like that's the best fit for a referral network anyways, is getting that, grassroots organic growth. And 5 years from now, I mean, I would say it's a bit utopian, perhaps, the vision. And mostly because it's such a long timeline and it feels like all of the technology is advancing so quickly. But I really think that we are focused on building something enriching and enduring, to ultimately act as a buttress for society and humanity, which, you know, we believe like the arts really have the ability to do that. Is that it is what elevates the human condition, you know, and ultimately unites us in the most tangible and impactful ways. So I really think that bringing more informational and price and transactional transparency can help at least provide a little bit more confidence and positive sentiment in that area, as well as the information, the access to information that is enabled by that is being enabled by the mainstreaming, if you will, of AI. I would love to think about a future where every single person is able to interact with the art market in a more sophisticated and informed way, and make choices about, you know, their lives and their data, as well as like the assets, you know, those data are associated with, or should they, the data the assets are associated with, that as if they could have someone like an art historian or a musicologist in their pocket, right? If you could have that level of confidence and understanding like what you're looking at and what you're experiencing and what you're, you know, co-creating and collaborating with and organizing, right? To be able to have that level of information at your fingertips and available from the bottom up, right? Like I think that is the type of utopia that I can envision. I think that we can envision, is we really want to create an enriching space for our creative life to live. And we do believe that, you know, the blockchain ultimately represents a better network and a better way to organize our digital lives.
Thank you. Also, I would love to know a little bit about your path in terms of like, you know, the mistakes, what your core mistakes when you were building the company. Can you just like tell us in a couple of sentences?
Okay. I will quote Bob Ross briefly. There are no really mistakes. There are only happy accidents. But that being said, you know, I think the only mistakes, the biggest mistakes I would feel that I've made, or maybe that we've made, have been coming from, motivated from pressures, kind of like external pressures, maybe for conformity or convenience and comfort. And so like tuning down a little bit of that weirdness maybe, or trying to like, you know, maybe just like bend a little bit too far backwards or hoop jump in order, you know, that kind of doesn't necessarily, you know, you feel a bit more stifled, right? Like, I think that's probably the biggest mistake that especially entrepreneurs can do, is like not having that volume turned all the way up on like your mission, your purpose, your vision, and also like what makes you unique, even if that is like weird or possibly, you know, polarizing. So I think that the fear, that sort of fear and resistance, you know, is something that I would consider a mistake that I know, you know, I've certainly been subject to, but mostly, you know, trying to not think of things in such black and white terms of like mistake or success, but really understanding it's more of like this process, right, of discovery and testing and building, compounding those failures into success, if you will.
Thank you, Carolyn. You've used a quotation, so that means that you're not only good in quoting, but also you're, let's say, picking up the best examples from the other, let's say, from the other people's experience. So whose entrepreneurial experience inspired you during your during launching your startups and M1X Labs in particular?
Well, in a weird way, I hadn't really considered this question before, Dennis, and I have to say this is a really great question, and it really has. I did have the questions before today, so I've been thinking about it quite intensely, and I think what has motivated me or inspired me the most as an entrepreneur, especially a creative entrepreneur, is it goes even further back than like contemporary references in like tech or Web3. I would say that my inspiration is I've probably been the most influenced and inspired by Ray and Charles Eames. the way that they fearlessly lived their creative lives and put that into their business, and sort of like just the intensity and the fearless creativity of their work and like professional life. I think that's something that has like really early on kind of like I wanted that life. I was like, I would love to just wake up and be able to play creatively and professionally all day. And I think in a lot of ways, I've sort of tried to like live my life as an artwork itself, right? And sort of become the artwork, and like just this process of learning by doing and design thinking, sort of like thinking about things very holistically, as well as, you know, this idea of iterative process. I think that that's probably like the biggest influence in my life. I mean, even more than any of their work particularly, it's the community and this like human scale grandiosity that they were able to, you know, ultimately, I mean, just I could go on and on about how I stand, but
Yeah.
I think that's
Carolyn,
probably
your co-founder Ryan is adding like kind of similar to the struggle artists go through to finding their style. I think we're still in the process of establishing the identity of our company.
Well, it's interesting because Ryan, I'm gonna have to quote Charles Ames to say, but like the idea that style precedes design is sort of backwards. Is that you actually need to? It's like it's that process of designing is what you're doing, is you're trying to solve a problem. So I think what Ryan is saying is like we're still in the process of like solving that problem, and it is an iterative process. It's a design process, and through that design process, that's when the style emerges, right? I think the comparison was that Charles, or the, you know, is quoted saying something like, you know, if you're wanting to do something that is a certain like look or feel, but you really don't have an understanding of the purpose behind that design, you're sort of like, you know, you've got things backwards, right? So it's this purpose-driven design that leads to style. Really, you know, we're sort of in that. We're very much purpose-driven, and we're in the design and iterative process, which is, I mean, for me, it's very much fun. So maybe it'd be cool if we never really have a set style, if you will, because I'd like to see that continue to evolve as I suppose the problems continue to evolve too, because there's never like a fixed solution. There's always an evolution of, you know, problem solution. It's very much like a hacking process.
So one of our last questions is in this webinar would be actually about fundraising. Could you tell us like your experience with that?
Especially during the bear market trend. I mean,
yeah.
The bear market trend.
In the previous 12 months.
I tried to really intellectualize it, that it really is very probabilistic in terms of like outcome, you know, so like it's a numbers game. That's to say it's a numbers game, right? There is going to be a percentage that is greater than zero of some kind of at least either correspondence back and forth, right? So like it's just, if you put up enough numbers and your outreach, right, and you target those wisely and intelligently, you know, there is a greater than zero probability that someone will be interested or at least respond to you or point you or maybe give you a lead or something like that, right? There's a very little scenarios in the world where there's a zero chance of anything, right? So it's a numbers game. So don't be afraid of the numbers. And secondly, the sooner you can get over any fear of hearing the word no and detach from that emotionally, the better off you're going to be. And lastly, this is probably like the number one advice for myself is watch out for perfectionism. 80%, you know, is good enough is usually good enough. So that's
good. So let's jump to our last question. As soon as you've structured your answer to the previous one as like in advice mode, let's proceed with it. And what would be your top 3 advice, but to the young Web3 startuppers?
Okay.
Along with the fundraising tips you've already mentioned, but with let's say startuppers tips.
Okay, I think that this actually will help you. This would actually help in fundraising too, because a lot of the fundraising part is knowing your audience and knowing what you're offering. So my first piece of advice would be to figure out what your first principles are. Right? This is like bleeding edge technology. It's an emerging market. And if you don't really know like what your motivations are, there's a lot of noise and a lot of things that will distract you and potentially mislead you. So that kind of segues into my second one, is that, you know, the clearer your voice and vision is, your purpose will be that much easier to find, and so will your people. And kind of like to go along with that, like bad news travels faster on the internet than good news. So it's a double-edged sword, something to keep in mind. But, you know, if you want to go down that road, you know, it is an energetic hamster wheel, whichever road you go down. So just kind of, you know, be aware that you reap what you sow, and that the good vibes do take longer to cultivate, but ultimately those are going to be the kind of relationships that support you during darker and more difficult times. And of course, like last but not least, I feel like, and this is not financial advice by any means, but never, ever, ever spend or invest what you cannot afford to lose. Yep. So like we're in a bear market right now, and, you know, probably there's a recession globally kicking off, but this is not the time to be playing it fast and loose with your life savings or your livelihood. And when people do that, it's bad for the Web3, it's bad for the ecosystem. And unfortunately, you know, just because there are fortunes to make, there are equally a number. There's plenty of people who are more than happy to, you know, be your friend and onboard you because you're their exit liquidity. So in summary, my advice for noobs would be know thyself, birds of a feather flock together. And like Ice Cube says, check yourself before you wreck yourself. So yeah.
Great. I mean, inspiration is key, and you've made a lot of inspiration during today's webinar. Thank you so much, Carolyn. We've enjoyed talking to you in less formal environment than it was during our mentorship process and during the demo day. And that was really fantastic. What kind of art do you have behind you?
This is actually this is a physical work, actually, and don't be fooled. This is actually a German painter. But it reminded me of one of my favorite beaches here. So I was like, I must have it. But then I was like, why? Anyways, but then I sort of went onto like a digital extremist, and I was like, digital art is the only art I want. Like, this is too much overhead. This is too much work to maintain and organize. I need only digital art from now on. I'm not only, but I mean, it's the balance has gone extremely high in terms of the ratio on the digital side. But yeah.
Cool. Thank you so much. I believe Sonia also loved our today's talk.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Thank you for your time. And I feel it's been great just to listen to it in a more like calm setting, as Denis just said.
Yeah, so please join the M1X Labs community, clicking the website, says gorgeous Anna. The next meeting will be on Tuesday. Yeah, thank you, Ryan, for your support. You showed a pretty good teamwork during this webinar. I believe the third co-founder, Lisa, was also watching us.
GM. Thanks,
yes.
Jordan.
And yeah, next Tuesday we'll introduce our audience the so-called Art NASDAQ, the Art Square IO startup from London.
Absolutely. We'll see you everyone next week, next Tuesday.
Yeah, stay tuned. Bye.
Thanks.
Thank you, Caroline, again.
Bye.
And good morning.